It's about getting to the closing table, right? It's not necessarily about finding the buyer. It's about making sure we get to the closing table. So even though that offer might be $10,000 more, you're not actually realizing that money.
You're risking.
Yeah,
You're not realizing that money until you get to the closing table.
Yep. And reason number 4,227
To work with a real estate
that you
professional.
don't want a FSBO. Wow.
The state of Florida requires you disclose anything that may materially affect the value of the property. They don't care if you lived in the house. They don't care how long you own the house. It drives me insane to see a seller's property disclosure with a big line through it that says seller never occupied the property.
All the time you see that.
Oh my God! It just if people get nothing more out of this, I hope they get that. Occupancy has nothing to do with disclosure. And
Darn it.
sorry,
you investors out there.
we should have a whole another one on investors and wholesalers because that
yeah.
just
Sign me
Know
up.
nothing about it. Nothing at all.
so anyways, but I find personally that it helps if you do know and you disclose it up front, then it's not shocking. So like if you're buying my house and I tell you, Bryan, I'm just going to go ahead and let you know, I opened a permit to put the fence up. I didn't close out the permit. So there's going to be an open permit at the city. The fence is up. It's still standing. I don't have any citations on it. It's all good. Then how do you feel about that?
I'm good with it.
I'll be good with that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just say that we're under contract. You feel that I'm trying to squeeze everything out of you as the buyer, and you go to the city and find out I have an open permit on that fence that hasn't been closed out. How do you feel now?
Fence is screwed up and it needs to come down.
Or that I, as a seller, need to close it, and it's a big obstacle. It's a big hurdle.
Right.
Yeah. So I love the city of St. Pete. I love the city of St. Pete.
That goes
I love
opposite
the
how
city
I
of
feel.
St. Pete. Shh, it was an affirmation.
She's asking permission
I was
forgiveness.
reaffirming my love
For the city of St. Pete.
for the city of St. Pete. I brought that one up because I did put up a fence on a property, and I did have a permit to do it. No, actually, at that time they said I didn't need a permit for a backyard fence. So I check the drawings. I know all the setbacks. I get everything right. I get the fence up, and then I get a notice in the mail that said that my fence on the one side
encroached.
well, no, it needed to be 4 feet instead of 6 feet because it was the main entrance side.
Tall.
Yes.
Okay.
And I did my research and I called the city back and I said, no, this isn't the main entrance side. This is the main entrance side. It was corner lot. And they did their research and they called me back and said, you're right. I'm like, thanks. Whew. So I have this, it just depends on who you talk to at the city. So many people go and open permits and then never do any work. So I can go open a permit to put up a fence.
And never actually start
Never
the fence.
actually start it. And so now I just have an open permit. So permits don't scare me, don't bother me. Some people, they do. I mean, I've invested in a lot of real estate too. I take on other people's messes all the time. I don't care. But some people, it really offends. So what this states is that permits, if they're open or closed or whatever, need to be taken care of during the inspection period. Unfortunately, those permits are not looked at during the inspection period. They're typically not seen until the title company does the title, does all their research, and then they say, "Oh, by the way, there's an open permit," and like people just start throwing up their arms and red flags, but it really isn't. So, just if you guys don't take anything else out of this, if you're going to look for permits, do it during the inspection period because, as per the contract, you can't cancel the contract based on open permits after the inspection period.
And reason number 4,227
To work with a real estate
that you
professional.
don't want a FSBO. Wow.
What's the percentage of the contractors not closing them out as opposed to the homeowner?
Oh, it's huge. I mean,
it's-
like it could be raining that day, and
they're
so
just not gonna do
the city inspector didn't go back out. You know, so most of the time, I mean, the contractor, if you have a contractor, is responsible for closing out the permit. I didn't always use a contractor for my stuff, so you know, there's all kinds of variables in there, but it's not a lien on the property.
So a homeowner, to protect themselves, if you are going to have something done to your property, you probably want to make sure the contractor sends you a closed permit.
Yes.
That would help us
Yeah.
facilitate
And
sales.
and then going back to that whole
Because they don't do it.
right, and going back to that
tell you
disclosure
that.
piece, if I know, hey, by the way, I got a pool put in, my contractor never closed out the permit, but we did everything to code. I can tell you that. I can tell you that up front. You can determine how important it is to you at that point in time, because there's nothing that says that you can't purchase my home without that closed permit.
Without it closed out. Yeah. Because the work could have never been started in the first place. to your
Exactly.
point.
Yeah. So on the contract, there's always been a paragraph 8A and 8B. Paragraph 8 is the financing paragraph. So this past revision, not the one that takes effect November 1st, but the past one actually showed where 8A said that they could pay cash or they could get financing, but there wasn't a financing contingency of the contract. So if they checked 8A, they were getting financing, and for some reason they got denied financing,
They could buy cash.
they could buy cash, or if they couldn't, they'd lose their escrow.
Okay.
So that was paragraph 8A, and then 8B was the financing piece of it. So now what the financing piece on 8A says is this is a cash transaction with no contingencies. And the reason that's important is over the last year and a half, 2 years with the craze in the market, one of the things that buyers were doing to show their strength is they were checking box 8A saying, hey, I'm getting financing, but there's no financing contingency. So if for some reason they didn't get their loan, they're forfeiting their escrow deposit. This language doesn't allow for that. I don't know how realtors are going to work around it or what they're going to do, but I just thought that was an important change as well.
Yeah, I think so, because I don't know, I know the market's kind of shifting a little bit right now, but there was a time even this summer where people were waiving everything.
Yeah.
And
0 day inspections.
No home inspections, no appraisals, they were just going into these things without no net.
Yeah. Just completely
hey,
blind.
here's an extra $25K.
Scary.
Just give you a bag of money.
Wow, when you say it like that, it
Please,
sounds
hindsight,
really...
it's
Please,
scary,
will you
right?
take my offer?
Yeah, when you say it like that, that's really scary.
Frightening.
I remember sitting with a group of agents and somebody said, I've got desperate buyers. And this was this past, spring. I'm like, what makes them desperate? Are they living in their car?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, really, what created the desperation? And it's that herd mentality. Everybody was running full force for it. I got to jump in and go too.
Yeah. Yeah. We went
It's like
through
buying
that.
Bitcoin. You see something going up and you want a part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah, and
Some of us waited too long.
the hardest thing is when it
Thanks for reminding
crashes to go buy it then.
Yeah.
Like
You got to buy the dip.
you buy the dip. I mean, and so whenever somebody says to me now that they're a real estate investor, I learned in 2004, 5, and 6.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, if somebody's investing in real estate when the market's like this, they're not a true investor. You're investing in real estate when the market's like this.
Amen.
Yeah, and same with stock market.
Yeah, I agree. So, hey, listen, we're gonna wrap up here, but you just made me think of a question.
Okay,
What do the next 12 months look like in real estate here in Tampa Bay?
hold on.
Crystal ball time.
She just left.
No, I have something for you.
Okay. Ask me. Is this like the Magic 8 Ball? Oh my gosh! Get out of here.
No, but seriously, I do have a Magic 8 Ball I keep on my desk. I had a seller once ask me, he wanted me to tell him exactly what his house was going to sell for. I'm like, I can't predict that. But anyways, I did see a great article yesterday, Fortune Magazine published, and they were talking about the number of homes that are going to slowly be released from forbearance. And, the doom and gloom folks
Paquito.
the doom and gloom folks that got hit hard with the Great Recession. They're like, oh, thinks everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket. But I thought was important was that the chart showed the release being and when those were going to be released. And I think there was a Zillow estimate that said for the month of September there might be like 240,000 homes
That's right.
released
Yeah.
in the country.
I was going to say, Gary Keller, he said at Mega Camp a couple of weeks ago that if every home that's currently in forbearance right now got released on the same day, It's 2 months inventory in today's
Thank
market.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's a great thing to take into consideration. But here's another one. The properties that are going to be released, what type of condition do you think they're in?
Well, if they haven't.
Not fantastic, I can tell you that.
No. And guess what buyers want? They want HGTV ready. So to me, this is an investor frenzy. Like if I was looking to invest in real estate right now, I'd be looking to pick up some of those forbearance properties. They probably need mostly cosmetic.
TLC.
They might.
They were good up until 2 years ago.
Yeah, but the buyer of today, sweat equity doesn't live in their vocabulary. And that's all I know.
Shame on them.
That's all I know. Like, I will never buy somebody else's finished product because real estate is my wealth building strategy. So you've got to, there are so many factors involved when we're looking at things like the real estate market and saying in 12 months from now, yeah, we might have a little bit more inventory, but if that inventory is getting picked up by investors, they want to make a profit, and it will, and they want to make a profit on it. So like you're looking at still an increased price. I do think that we're going to have a softening in the increase, the growth. So year over year, we've had a 20% increase in average sales prices.
Yep.
The historical average is about 4%. That's a really good, healthy market. So I think we're going to see that 20% increase come down.
Sure.
But I think it's going to come down to something healthier, like a 6 to 8%.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's expecting it to go negative. But it's going to slow. It's going to slow down.
And the good news is the homeowners that are in forbearance, they have equity now. In most cases, they still have the equity, so they're able to sell, get out of that problem, if you will, and go on to downsize or rent.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not in distress.
Exactly. So, looking over the next 12 months, I think we're going to have a little bit of inventory come to the market, but I definitely don't think that it's going to be anything detrimental. I think if you bought this past spring, you're still good. If you sold this past spring, you're golden. If you sold and rented, I had a couple people do that. If they could find a rental property.
Yeah. We've got a guy that works with us who just did the same thing. He sold this past summer with intentions of using that asset now to buy 2 places, and right now he's renting.
Yeah.
So.
It's, I know you're wrapping up, but 2012, I heard Warren Buffett talk about this exact thing, and I've been preaching about it for 2 years now, 3 years maybe. He was talking about that the Great Recession just kind of crumbled the housing industry. Like people weren't building houses any longer.
Sure.
And we still, we might be now building at the rate that we were back in 2002. So so you've got about an 8 to 10 year window where new construction wasn't happening.
Still way behind.
But guess what else happened?
Pandemic.
No.
Millennial home buyers, boom. Biggest generation in our history.
Yes, 72% of home buyers right now are millennials, and they're like 30 years old. They got a good job. They're starting families.
We're going to see that run, as Brian, you've demonstrated on some recent podcasts. But for the next 5 to 7 years, that market's going to. They're like better than the baby boomers.
Yeah, well, guess what else they're doing?
Better.
They're having pandemic babies left and right. What were they doing when they were stuck at home? They're all pregnant and having babies and needing bigger places. Yeah. So, I mean, those are all factors that you have to throw into the mixing pot and look at. It's not as easy as asking the magic 8 ball.
No. And then what I was saying about the pandemic is new home construction stopped for that period of time in 2020. So you were already behind, and now you went further behind.
Well, it stopped, and then the prices jumped up, and then we don't have a labor force to do the work, and you can't get appliances, or furniture for that matter.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to just talk about is mention Realtors. It's important that you read every check box on a contract.
Every word.
We talked about the financing part, but every now and then you do see somebody miss something where the seller's not choosing title. Or the seller's paying for the buyer's doc stamps, or vice versa. You'll see a buyer that has to pay the seller's doc stamps. I mean, it's important if you're selling real estate, practicing, read every word, every line, and make sure you're advising your clients, to their best interest, and you don't miss something and go, uh-oh.
Yeah, you're spot on. For 12 years, I was a managing broker. I had up to 450 agents at one time, and every day I got to ask a contract question. Multiple times a day. and I always brought the contract out to look at the language of the contract and read the language of the contract with them. It is the best friend of a realtor.
And don't assume because your state practices one way that buyer coming from another state or just some sneaky investor is going to check a box that normally would never get checked.
My favorite one, I had a sneaky realtor teach me this one. On the seller's closing cost, there's a blank line there. Did you know that? And they'll put 3% of the purchase price towards the buyer's closing cost on that little blank line. And if you type it in,
It blends in.
most realtors miss it.
You just need to read every line.
Because normally that would be an addendum.
Yeah,
Or
or an additional term. So
Yeah.
somebody actually who practices that way told me they practice that way. And so, guys, just heads up, that's how some people practice real estate. It's not wrong.
Which is another reason
other
why you
thing-
don't want to FISBO.
The other thing that I found out many years ago, and I'm an investor, so I found this out, was, the 15-day inspection period. What does a buyer have to do to exit that 15-day? On day 14, what can they do? What do they have to do to legitimately end that contract? And this is something that most agents don't know.
Now, just to let you know that we are specifically talking about the as-is contract, which 95% of realtors use and don't even know how to use the other one. So on the other contract, on the standard contract, there's a whole big process for it. But on the as-is contract, they have to deliver a notice of cancellation and release of escrow.
Without the inspection.
Here's
Here's the tricky thing. So, you'll have a realtor think, hey, you never did an inspection.
They
Why
don't
you
have
getting
to
out?
with an as-is.
Well, guess what? I went and found another house.
Yeah.
And they like that better.
Yeah, I've heard about investors doing this where they'll make an offer on a property sight unseen just so that they can get under contract
they
on
write
something.
a 7-day or a 3-day so they can visually
and
look
then
at it.
when they get a chance to go out and look at the property, they realize, hey, like I'm not going to be able to turn enough margin on this home.
Yep.
So I'm just going to cancel the contract.
Well, and
Or
technically,
they renegotiate and they're going to throw it.
Or-
Needs a roof,
yeah.
boom, 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 and that's it.
and
That's what you got.
technically, looking at their financials, that was an inspection on their part.
Yes.
I mean, they were inspecting their financials.
Sure.
I deal primarily in the luxury market, and that other contract I prefer, depending on the condition of the home, because a buyer cannot just say, "Hey, I woke up this morning, my hair was parted on the wrong side. I'm going to cancel
Buyer's
the contract."
remorse? Come on.
Yeah. So, but in the as-is contract, they can. And you brought up another good point. Sight unseen. With COVID, what we experienced was a lot of virtual showings. If you start looking now at the number of new listings on the market and the number of back on the markets, you're going to see that back on the market has been increasing because there have been these virtual showings. And then they fly into town and they see it and they say,
the neighborhood doesn't quite.
yeah.
I didn't see the 7-Eleven at the end of the street there.
Yeah,
with,
it
like,
just
the
didn't
crowd.
do it
Yeah.
for me, so I'm going to cancel the contract. So, we had an offer on one property, and I had asked the agent, "How long have you been working with this buyer?" She said, "A year." I said, "How many other homes has he been under contract with?" 3. He hadn't seen the property, and I had just talked to the seller about this. I'm like, I just want to give you this information. My recommendation would not be to negotiate or to go under contract with this buyer until he actually comes into town to see the property, or we're just taking it off the market. You're losing eyes on it, and then it looks bad too to come back on the market. Like, what was wrong with the house?
So if you're a listing agent and when you're looking at maybe 3, 4, 5 offers, I mean, that's something to consider. I mean, you want to make sure that, hey, I know those people, they went in and they saw the house. This person, you verify with the agent, they're going to fly in 2 days. Their offer is better, but is it worth $5,000 or $10,000 to take and not take this offer?
Well, but
today?
it's how we started. It's about getting to the closing table, right? It's not necessarily about finding the buyer. It's about making sure we get to the closing table. So even though that offer might be $10,000 more, you're not actually realizing that money.
You're risking.
Yeah,
You're not realizing that money until you get to the closing table.
Yeah.
And you see it happen, all the time. In a normal market, we would see it happen when you're fighting for a buyer. Outside of COVID, when maybe if you have 2 offers, that's considered great in a normal market.
2, yeah.
And when you have the investor that hasn't put eyes on the property, I would have agents all the time, suggest that deal. They fly in 5 days later, write up a report. I want this, 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 and this. And they already lost the other buyer.
Can we have another episode on
What not to do?
how people use the as-is contract incorrectly?
Sure.
And the origin of the contracts, because this is contacts to contracts, and I made it to closings today. But yeah, I'm really passionate about contracts and how they're used and used incorrectly.
Well, the last episode we did, you did the contact part. Mm-hmm. So now we're at the contract.
Now we're at the contracts part.
Perfect.
Hey, maybe that we shouldn't air this one until we do the contracts, and then we'll have contracts.
I like it.
Hey, we could do that. We can make that happen.
All right.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for dropping some knowledge on us today, Rachel.
As you can tell, I like this stuff.
Yeah, like going into this, I'm like, this is what I'm going to fall asleep for. But like, you actually
make sure you're working with an agent that knows every line of a sales contract.
It actually being a lot more
hugely
interesting
important.
than I thought. So yeah, good work.
Well,
So
good. Thanks.
again, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Contacts to Contracts podcast. On behalf of Rachel and John, I'm Brian, and if there's anything that you need, always here to serve.